rage against the dying of the light. Though wise men at their end, no dark is right, because their words had forked no lightning, they do not go gentle into that good night. Rage, rage against the dying of the light.
Welcome back to the harbor, everybody. Happy Harbor Days, if you will, if that joke's not overdone. I'm with Scott. He's out of town, but he still showed up like a boss. And we got Sumner. I tried to give him a mic that worked, but it's that same one Scott had trouble with. So forgive us for any audio issues. We're having a cool little episode today on Interstellar, 10 years later. Can you believe it?
It does make me feel old. When this movie came out, I was an award-winning journalist. And what I mean is I was in college and wrote a review of this for my newspaper and got third place in the state. I didn't even know I was entered, even after my editors butchered it and gave a much more positive headline than I would have based on the text that I had written. But that is neither here nor there. With us is Sumner. Why are you coming back for this one? Why Interstellar? I'll step back from the mic, and why now? It's 10 years later. Interstellar has grown in popularity, if anything, which we will talk about. But why are you back?
Yeah. Basically, it's kind of a because I'm not the let me rate this film on the technical merits guy. You know what I mean? Like I'm very vibey and flowy and stuff like that, or whatever. And I can't show up and try and say Interstellar is like Christopher Nolan's best movie, or anything like that. Just this, that, or the other, or whatever. Because it's long and it's it's kind of strung along by the set pieces, and I feel like that comes across in the tonality or whatever. But Nolan is good. I think the reason he is generally beloved is that he takes big ideas and concepts and actually manages to do them justice by packaging them into an accessible mainstream kind of format. And with that said, I feel like Interstellar actually does not hold the audience's hand the way some of his other movies do. Like Oppenheimer, it's R-rated, it's very challenging, stuff like that or whatever. But I question whether it hits emotionally for me as hard as Interstellar does sometimes. I consider Oppenheimer and Interstellar kind of companion pieces, actually. They're both very eschatological. They concern the end of the world and, impending doom, as it were. And so they kind of take different, vectors into that subject matter and stuff like that or whatever. But yeah, I find it a really brutally challenging film. I find it like an elemental slog. It's I feel every minute of it. And yeah, the way it makes me feel, I find it an incredibly emotionally powerful film. I find it huge. I feel like that's baked into the story itself of exploration and interstellar travel and taking it to the edges of the universe and stuff like that. And I was thinking about it, and it's Interstellar makes me feel the way I want films to make me feel. It's it's taking me to the edge of the universe. It's taking me into the black hole. It's kind of actively expanding, past the limits of human imagination. And the more I watch it, the more I love it. It's just, I think it's a great film. I think it's a great film. I can talk about it endlessly.
Yeah. Well, I was so interested to do this because I was such a Nolan fanboy growing up through high school and all that. And it was
Indeed.
And then The Dark Knight Rises came out, and I was like, well, that was good, but like it wasn't as a powerhouse as his last couple of movies. And
It was
then,
the third in a trilogy. It was
well,
Christopher Nolan doing a third in a trilogy.
I know. I'm just saying it shook my faith a little bit.
Yeah.
But this movie came out and I enjoyed it, but I felt a little mixed on it. And for a while I kind of I bought into this idea that it was something it was not. And I would kind of play it up just to annoy younger film buffs because this movie has had legs for the last 10 years. And that's part of the reason I wanted to talk about it because it has captured Gen Z film goers. A lot of people a little bit younger than us find this to be one of their favorite movies of all time. And it's not from a usual crowd that you would expect to say that. I see it as like a very general audience, like has been captured by this. I found that very fascinating and also inspiring in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
And I wanted to see, I only seen this, I think two, maybe three times, maybe twice in theaters. I don't remember.
That's
And it's been
interesting.
about 7 years. So I wanted to see how I felt about it now. And I rewatched it and I realized when I was 20, I was looking for the wrong things from this movie. Now, I'm not going to say this is a perfect movie. And I'm not going to say it's my favorite, one of my favorite sci-fi movies, but I did enjoy it more this time. And I was able to lessen up on the things that had me pinned down as a 20-year-old who was, I think the whole problem with me is I grew up, I watched 2001: A Space Odyssey at 13, didn't know what the hell was going on. Then I
Yeah.
rewatched it again two times when I was 20, when I was 16.
Right.
And that challenged me unlike any other film before. It had my brain going to places. And I wanted to feel that again so badly with a big space epic. I kept wanting in my head, I wanted Nolan to take me in Interstellar further and even more experimental and even crazier than 2001 just because at the time I was hungry to be challenged in that kind of experimental kind of way that thought provoking. And this film has a lot
I
of
get that.
thought provoking thoughts, if you will, but in just different areas that I was not
Yes.
privy to when it came out. And so I am ready to talk about it again in a different way as a an elder now.
2 points on your feelings.
Yeah.
Interstellar is an incredibly sincere film. It is very emotional. Like it is unapologetic about the sentiment that it carries. Like that's part of what I mean by like it doesn't really care like how you feel about it. It's kind of like a sci-fi, and then I plot some sentiment, and it's like here it is, take what you will. And I also think it asks a lot of the viewer, and like I think you've really got to think about what is happening, like as it relates to being at the edge of space, like racing against, um, like the dying planet essentially. And it's like it's funny you mentioned. It is utterly unsurprising to me that this movie resonates with Gen Z, like movie watchers or whatever. It's because like with it's like they're watching the collapse, and it's like not to make it too morbid or shit like that or whatever, but it's like this movie is super real. Like it is super real. Like we are like racing against ecological collapse, one ways or another. And space travel is one of like our only ways out of it. It's similarly difficult to Oppenheimer. The end of the world angle is more like explicit in Oppenheimer or whatever. But yeah, it's unsurprising to me that it's finding a wider audience the longer it's around, because it's not like The Prestige. Like The Prestige is like a similarly like an incredible Nolan movie or whatever, but it's like just by nature of being a Nolan movie, it's not just like expanding endlessly into new audiences and into new conversations, stuff like that. The
Yeah.
Yeah.
way Interstellar does.
I would say
Interstellar hits.
Yeah, the Prestige has grown some, but I don't think not as much as Interstellar
No.
does. And I was
No.
going to ask you, uh, like why you think this with younger viewers, this is, exploded so much. And I think your like climate crisis analysis, I mean, it's right there, and I'm like, duh, because they're like having to stare it in the face more.
It's low
Um,
hanging fruit. It's like there's just like one example. It's
yeah,
like
sure.
the movie captures the imagination. It at bare minimum.
It's also the soundtrack is really great. One of Hans Zimmer's best, which is saying a lot.
Yes, it's
And
saying a lot, but
it's
I
good
feel
for TikTok.
similarly.
And I'm not just saying that cynically, but like that adds to things. It's good for social media, which
Yeah,
adds to the virality of it, the people seeking this movie out.
yeah.
Um, but you were saying earlier your girlfriend hadn't seen this movie, but she recognized the music, Adrian. Because she's not into 3 hour sci-fi epics, really, which I understand. I understand completely. I know
But
where
she was looking up from her crocheting more than she usually does when I put shit on. I will say that.
okay.
But we have kind of like we're gonna both focus and watch this whole movie, and then there's also where I'm just putting shit on while she does her own shit, and
Yeah,
but
sure.
obviously a lot of people have that, but
Yeah.
especially because I watch way more movies than most people, But
Yeah,
anyway,
like I don't think Parker would be like, let's watch The Last Tango in Paris. Like she doesn't want to do that.
no, but
Um,
you were talking about Hans Zimmer. It made me think because it's such a wild score, different from his other stuff.
so many goddamn funereal organs.
He had that dog in him and when he made it because it's very distinct, unlike any of his other scores. And when you talked about being shocked about The Lion King, because you had not realized or forgot that Hans Zimmer did the music for The Lion King.
Oh yeah, I forgot. I didn't. I forgot that Hans Zimmer did the music. I was like,
And
oh
I was
shit.
like, yeah.
Yeah.
But the fact that you were shocked by that, it kind of reinforces the idea to me that he normally does keep this specific direction sonically, but not always. And there are outliers, and this is one of them because
Yes,
it is very haunting score, unlike anything I've ever heard, really. And it's such
Yes.
it adds to it so much. It's crazy.
There is a bonus feature on the Blu-ray, like the hard copy of
yeah.
Interstellar, about the music specifically. Um, and like he asked Hans Zimmer, Nolan asked Hans Zimmer, he gave him a prompt for what became the film's theme
Yeah.
before he told him what the movie was gonna be. Like he told him like something about like a father missing his son or whatever, and Hans Zimmer had a son, so like he wrote something for his son or whatever. But the character actually turned out to be Murph, and so the theme like for their separation kind of like arose from that. But the other cool thing about that special feature is that it goes in depth into their selection of the organ, like specifically like as like the recurring like sonic motif like of the film or whatever. And so like essentially like the facets of like the human breath like element of the pipes, like it, because like it shows it's in an actual big ass church that they rented out to like use this organ and stuff like that. And so it's got these pipes like all around the sanctuary, the cathedral, like pushing this air and stuff like that. And there's this clip of like a low sub note that they play, like just to like kind of they essentially bass test the organ in the cathedral or whatever, and they just play the lowest note on the cathedral, and like you can look it up on YouTube, but like the camera just picks up the entire cathedral like vibrating, like with a violence or
I'd
whatever.
love to be in that room.
Bruh, right. And the human element of like the pipes going and the organ is really powerful. And the way I think Inception is this way too, because Inception is his other like really noticeable, recognizable score. And like it coincidentally another Nolan. But the way the soundtrack cues like to like a ticking clock, essentially. It's
Yeah.
like tick, talk, tick, talk, like the swells kind of like track with the timing. And it hits. It hits.
There's also,
you know,
there is aspects of this like where he was ahead of his time in a way of like there's a mix because it's 2014 and they had just because that was like hitting like right as NASA was getting their funding cut and like this is a very Obama era movie I feel like with what it was trying to say. And at the time,
it's a very political movie.
It was.
It's in the subtext, but it's very political. Very political.
At the time, I was very much like, "Yeah, we need to go to Mars. This, and this," you know. And then, as time went on, I feel like no, we need to. We could put everything we can into fixing the planet we're already on right now. So I do disagree with that part of that film. It's like, well, we have possibly the money and technology to do what we can to keep our planet habitable here. Let's focus on that instead of trying to go to a new planet.
Right. So this is one of my main problems with the movie. Is that I can both agree that I want humanity to explore space. I agree that we are explorers, that we are a scientific species, and that is in our blood. And also, I don't know, there's a lot of stupid stuff my tax dollars pay for, and I think sending rockets places is pretty cool. So I'd rather be spent on that because at least it's pretty cool. But the privatization of space exploration has only exploded since this movie. But it feels more, and I don't know a ton about SpaceX and stuff, but it feels more like billionaires want another planet to exploit, and they want to get away from the plebes. That's what it feels like, and it feels very pie in the sky, which is good for a movie, but is it good for the actual most powerful people on the planet to consider wasting their time on when they lack any sort of spirituality? They're completely venal, and we have the capabilities to fix this planet. Because in this movie, it's a blight that's taking over that they don't know how to stop.
Well, obviously, this movie, it's like completely different from what.
This movie, it's completely different. It's like, okay, we like Earth is fucked. Period. Oh, we don't know how to fix this. In our reality, it's like, no, we can we should have done this decades ago. But like we could have invested in green technologies. We could have worked on like, cutting out plastic, like all these things that Greenpeace will tell you about. So it is kind of frustrating to see this movie, and it's weird to think like it is political in that sense, but I really don't agree with the politics, and that's one of my big issues with the movie. I believe I would like to end with this. I think Adrian, you're softer on this movie after having rewatched it. This is my second time watching on this movie. I had a mixed reaction the first time. I think I'm harder on this movie now, actually, 10 years later. I think to me, seeing it again, the flaws are more apparent. I'm not saying it's a bad movie. I think this is an uneven movie that doesn't entirely work, but it has several 9 out of 10 scenes. There are parts of this movie that are genuinely excellent. Some of the best sci-fi I've seen, some of the best Nolan stuff I've seen, and then other stuff that I think is gobbledygook, frankly. What were you going to say, Summer?
Let me hop in there. My favorite movies, and I am totally sympathetic to that argument.
Yes.
Like I really like I see through your eyes, and I see exactly what you're talking about with this film in particular, actually. And so this stuff, this realm of like the conversational domain, is why I find Interstellar so interesting. Is like it's a bit of like, tell me how you feel about Interstellar, and it'll tell me about how you feel about the climate crisis, about like it tax dollars in NASA, about billionaires, like our consumption levels, all this stuff or whatever. And so it depends on who you're talking to in like the eco communities and stuff like that. There are people in those communities making an effective case that we've killed the planet already. So
Yeah.
we can't know. We don't know, or whatever, but just pointing to like this, that, or the other, like in terms of it, and that's not to mention, like what we're signing up for, with the impending presidential administration. We're
Yeah,
lifting
we don't even have to talk about
regulation.
that.
No, we don't, or whatever. But it's like it apart from like what actually winds up happening, what is interesting about Interstellar is it is real on the level of in our reality, as opposed to like their fictional, the story or whatever. In ours, the billionaire class making all the decisions, Bezos, Elon, not Bill Gates, but like others or whatever, they buy into this. They buy into the humanity's future is getting off this rock. And it's like, Elon's got, influence that's, continuing to develop and stuff like that or whatever. And Bezos is off doing his thing or whatever. The people with the money and the people making decisions have made a lot of these decisions. And like the future is going to be, a mix of like, just seeing what happens and, watching Interstellar every few years and just being like, oh, that's interesting. It's an interesting movie.
One of the things in Interstellar that they get, though, is a wormhole opens up and they can access faster than light travel, which is not something we can do.
It's sci-fi.
Unless
it's
future
great.
fifth-dimensional human does that. And I feel like if they were going to help us, they might have done it already. So also, like, I hear Bezos, for instance, talk about having space stations in orbit.
Yeah.
And it's a lot of people living off world, but like it's still going to be confined to our solar system, probably Mars at the farthest. So, how feasible is it really? And are you going to have an Elysium situation where the rich are living on a space station and then the poor people are all, I guess Matt Damon's stuck on Earth in that movie instead of whatever planet he's on in this movie.
Right.
It is interesting. I watched this movie and I think I forgot. The first time I watched it, I mean, years ago when it came out, I either didn't know or forgot that Matt Damon is in it, and it's very odd. It's kind of like when you're watching Oppenheimer, and there just everybody want to work with Nolan, and so you're like, oh shit, Rami Malek's in this movie for 2 seconds, like, but he's actually important, stuff like that.
Yeah,
which does take you out of the movie a bit, but Matt Damon's good in this. I just think it's funny.
Yeah, like young Timothy Chalamet. It's like,
yeah, I forgot he's in this.
Crazy now watching it. Now.
Well, it's like I don't know who said it. I don't know who said it, but it's like it's somebody rambling on about like it's science and materialism or whatever, and the quote is science asks, give us one miracle and we'll explain the rest, or something to that effect or whatever. And Interstellar's miracle is the wormhole. It's like they get the wormhole near Saturn that lets them jump to a whole different galaxy where like they actually have, the possibility of finding an inhabitable world or whatever. And just to like it linger on Dr. Mann for a second, I have to talk about how much I love the very intentional seeming shot of Cooper and Dr. Mann wrestling against that like massive icy landscape. It's like it's a shot that it's like it's not terribly long, but it lingers for like just a few seconds long enough to give the impression of like the vast expanse of the landscape, with like the tininess of the figures like squabbling within it.
Yeah.
That the closest thing to an antagonist the movie has apart from the elements is a dude literally named Dr. Mann at the furthest edges, like the very edge of a black hole. He's fighting Dr. Mann. Like that's the kind of on the nose like writing and symbolism that I'm like, Nolan, I get what you're on.
But at the end of the day, it's always been a primal thing between men, and hasn't stopped. Cain and Abel,
Yeah.
shit like that. I see what you're saying. It's like,
Yeah, it's so on the nose. I'm kicking myself for not getting it earlier.
Right, but like,
Also,
yeah,
if you've listened to us before, I overthink things sometimes, and sometimes I just miss what's very obvious, like that.
well, I've never overthought anything in my life,
Yeah,
but
yeah, well, yeah, sure, okay.
so
well, it was like,
I was kind of overthinking like Timothy Chalamet growing up into Casey Affleck. I was like, that's perplexing.
that's not the worst casting
No, it's not
choice
the
I've
worst
ever
casting at
seen.
all, actually. It's just funny now that it's 10 years later and Timothy Chalamet is a grown man, although it still looks the same. Uh, which is
He's the
why
man.
he's Muad'Dib. But
Yeah,
well,
uh,
I remember him
heard.
recently. He looked back on this film and he was talking about how it was such a big deal to him at the time, obviously, because he wasn't well known and he was a
Yeah,
young
yeah,
actor.
he was.
And he felt like they shot so much stuff because, I mean, that first hour is on Earth and like he was in a lot of it. So he felt like he had this big role in it because he was an inexperienced actor. He didn't know how, that kind of stuff works. But he says when he got to the premiere and he saw how little of it he was actually in, he like couldn't help but like get emotional, like cry because it was such a small part and his young self just didn't really get the scope of the film at the time.
Yeah,
I found that
that's
interesting.
brutal. Yeah,
he's
But,
all right. He's okay. He's doing
he's
okay.
okay. Yeah, he's pretty good. But
The
also like I feel like
I'm not too worried about him.
I feel like if you can't accept the divine intervention of the wormhole, but you can accept the fucking monolith in 2001, I don't know. I feel like that's kind of iffy to me.
No, I can accept it from a plot point.
Okay.
As a
yeah,
plot point, I mean, there's some contrivance of like, why is it near Saturn and not Mars, where it's easier to get to? But that's just because they spend more time in the spacecraft, and it's a longer, better movie, I guess. But more drama. Um,
yeah.
but it's I think what I was saying earlier with my problem with the wormhole, it's not that I have a problem with the wormhole in this movie. It's that if the movie itself is making the argument that we need to travel outside our solar system, but we don't know how to do that with current technology, it's not wise for us to put all of our eggs in the basket
Yeah.
of traveling outside our solar system. I was talking on a metatextual level. I
Yeah.
wasn't talking
Yeah.
about the movie itself.
Yeah. Also, it just like it's hard not to talk about Elon Musk, but like
It's hard not to. It's
his whole
hard not
presence
to.
now has just like soured a lot of people on anything that he touches. And him being the head of SpaceX is just like, you want this guy in charge of humans making it outside of Earth? Like, it's just, ugh.
He made a that's what she said joke on X the other day, which
On
is one of
Twitter.
his many things. Everything he's done with X. I'm not a fan of Elon, if that's not
Twitter.
apparent.
Yeah.
Yeah, Twitter. We're gonna dead name X. I don't care. Um, but yeah, I don't trust this guy. The Department of Government Efficiency that they're allegedly trying to run or create. It's not an official cabinet position, but it spells Doge, Doge. The guy is using memes from the time this movie came out and thinking it's still relevant. And if you can't even keep up with memes, how are you
Yeah.
going to keep up with the latest human ingenuity? You fucking twat.
See, yeah. I mean, like that's the open. Like, it's again. It's part of what makes Interstellar interesting to me.
It is. It is
It's like
interesting.
like the ongoing relevance of like space travel and what's happening with it in particular.
Because I remember
Yeah.
when Newt Gingrich was talking about a moon base and everybody was making fun of him. And part of me, I was younger, I was like, man, I kind of want a moon base. I don't know. That sounds kind of cool. Yeah. um,
No, we could see space warfare by 2030. Like every meeting like nation state like that's the race that's going on right
The
now. And it like well it's like it's so interesting too because like just to like okay how do you, well, no it dude like it Interstellar is like it's a very it's more meaningfully complex than it appears on its face. It on its face, it's a sci-fi movie. You know, like a 2001 homage. You know, like it's couched in imagery and like ideas and with themes that people understand or whatever. But like this is exactly why I love it. Is this like if you really stop and think about like what's being depicted and like our current relation to like, you know, the stuff depicted in this story, it's very meaningful. It's like ongoingly relevant. Um and yeah, I find it fascinating. See, like that's what, apart from the wormhole, I find it such a grounded movie. Every time I go back to it, and I've watched it a number of times, is like that there's like, you know, when they're in the spaceship and stuff like that, like the but like so much of it is just like elemental, like with the waves or like, you know, with the oxygen on like, you know, Dr. Man's planet or whatever. Like I feel the brutality of it. Like I feel the desolation of being that far out.
It's
And
tactile.
Like that's a good word for it.
It's tactile because Nolan shoots things practically. Even that TARS robot is practical in a lot of shots, which is insane to think about. They made that.
Bruh, one of my favorite moments in the movie, and I don't know if I've ever caught it before, was when it Cooper is asking TARS about, you know, Brand's relationship with Edmonds or whatever. He's trying to suss out if they had a thing, essentially, and they TARS essentially gives it away that they had something, and Cooper says, like he says, I've got a it. TARS says, I've got a discretion setting, and Cooper says, but not a poker face, slick. And he walks away, and I never caught that the robot turned and you see just the front of it in the screen as Cooper is walking away. And he says, but not a poker face, slick. And you just see like this computer screen staring at you. It hit me comedically in a way I had never really thought about or felt before. And it's like a classic kind of movie. Like he makes classic kinds of films or whatever. But it
also
for
pushes
being
the
so
technology.
I find it very comfortable.
But he also,
you know, for stuff like that.
Yeah, he also pushes technology to its limit. And let's get this out of the way. This is one of the best looking movies ever made in terms of special effects, especially.
Yeah. Like
this is 10 years old, and like I haven't seen a space movie do this as well.
Because he doesn't use any green screens in this movie. It was actually ahead of its time. Before we had all this volume technology, they had the only CGI that they had was for a lot of the space, you know, black hole and all that stuff, which they rendered at like 8K and then projected it behind the actors on in the sets and stuff. So it was like good to go. And it was crazy. And like all the sets, you know, it's crazy how off-putting the two planets they go to are to me, because they're tactile, but they're real, and they're both in Iceland. It's the fact that you could go to Iceland and see both of those locations is crazy to me.
Yeah.
Because obviously Tunisia works so well for fucking Tatooine. But that's like, okay, I've seen deserts before. I've seen a lot of deserts in a lot of movies. So that makes sense to me though. And this is just like the fact that they found these otherworldly locations is crazy. And there's something so off-putting about landing in that giant space of water and it's only up to your knees. I don't know why. It's just something creepy about that to me.
That is creepy. Is that a place they found? That's not like a okay, that's not a set.
No.
Okay.
Crazy.
No, having it be that shallow at the same time is crazy. I think what makes it uncanny is the fact that it is so Earth-like because it's Earth, but it looks inhospitable. So it brings that primal fear out of you of like, yes, this is my home, but this is not somewhere I can build a home, you know. That works on that because those mountains look wonky.
And then like I also watched the behind the scenes where all that dust cloud stuff was real. They made like a synthetic dust thing that they blew into the air like in mass.
That's
They have these giant fans and stuff, and like Lithgow was talking about. He's like, well, I expected to turn and look at nothing, but no, they wanted it all on camera, and they have this
Yeah.
synthetic dust blowing at them. I'm like, damn, dude, it's crazy. And they grew
Man,
all their crops, their corn, and for the cornfield.
And they
that's
sold
really
it
neat.
back for a profit.
Yeah, that is really neat.
That's what's funny
That's
to me.
insane.
There is some stuff. Listen, as much as I love practical filmmaking, there are things where I'm like, did you have to like, you know, blow fake dust into everybody? But it works. I
It
can't
looks
argue
good.
with the result. Looks great, and the actors do it right. And you do have that thing. I mean, speaking of real, correct me if I'm wrong. But a lot of with the exception of who is it? Ellen Burstyn, who plays older Murph.
Mm.
All of the interviews they have for that in-universe documentary, they're actually talking to old farmers and stuff from the Midwest, talking about Dust
The
Bowl.
Dust Bowl.
Yes.
Yeah. And stuff.
Man.
That's yeah. So with the exception of the actor who plays Murph, they're all really talking about
Yeah.
their situation, right?
It's crazy,
Which I had
man.
forgotten about that framing at the beginning.
Yeah.
I thought it was cool.
It's one of those things where it's interesting. Like even when I first saw the movie, I could tell that that's what it was, and it's something I keep bringing up on this show. That if you film something, the audience is subconsciously going to pick up things. It's and it makes me think of Barbie actually, because at the end of Barbie you get this montage of childhood that's actually like family photos and videos from the filmmaker, from just people in the cast and crew. And even in the theater, having no idea that was going to happen, I just understood what it was.
Yeah.
And I've heard Greta Gerwig talk about that. How like you kind of just have to trust the audience. And you know, it wouldn't break the movie at all. It wouldn't even hurt the movie. If you just thought all of it was staged, all of these interviews, but knowing that they're not, it's so much better. There's a similar thing in Up in the Air, that George Clooney movie. They do some interviews with people, and it's right after the 2008 crash. And even though it's within the framing of the movie, you can tell it's real people. You can tell like this is not an actor. This is a guy tearing up while talking about providing for his children, because he's just a normal guy, and it makes it that much more powerful. So the framing device in the I mean, that's another thing where it's like, even though it's not like practical versus digital effects, that just shows how much, even in a crazy high concept movie, Nolan's willing to go for, you know, the viewer's immersion, for verisimilitude.
Yes.
Yeah, totally. And like I also didn't realize that, first of all, this whole thing originally started just as a treatment from physicist Kip Thorne and a producer, and then Jonathan Nolan took it on. And then when Spielberg dropped, that festered for a few years, and then of course Jonathan was a homie. It was like, hey, I think my brother could do this. It's like, oh yeah, you think so? But it was like a merging of Jonathan's script and Nolan's script, and the first hour is Jonathan's script of on Earth and all the farms and stuff, and then most of the space stuff was stuff that Chris Nolan's been thinking about for a long time, and they merged the scripts. But I was surprised to hear that, because like I think Jonathan knew. I feel like some of the world building is more effortless in the first act than it is later on. And I think Jonathan Nolan gets that, because to me that's like easy world building, instead of saying, well, I'm not saying that Chris does this, but like, as you know, no, but when he's talking to the teachers at the beginning about his son being a farmer, you get the entire premise of like,
you get some purpose written lines from
it's
Matthew
like, okay, the
McConaughey
universities
there,
can
too.
only take a handful. Okay, we forgot they ran out of food. There's a major crisis.
Yeah,
There's
no armies.
There's no armies. And any other hands, I feel like it could have been way clunkier, way more exposition heavy. But even though they do drop a lot, it was written just well enough to be believable in a conversation.
I'm really glad you mentioned that particular point of the structure because I was actually going to stand for two particular points on the way the movie is like structured, like kind of independently. But I'm gonna use another like totally unrelated movie as a comparison for a second. You know, in Mandy, the way you get the title card halfway through the movie.
Yeah.
It is so like there's the point in Mandy where like the first act is like over and done or whatever, and like Nick Cage is like winding up into revenge mode or whatever, and then you get Mandy in like the black metal font or whatever, like halfway through.
Yeah.
I feel like you could do something similar with Interstellar when you get the shot of his truck leaving the house halfway through the movie. You get that really long, lingering shot of the side of his truck driving away from that house for the first time against the sound of the rocket lifting off and shit like that or whatever. And the way it's like a tonal severing of like the first part from the second that is like a bit disorienting. And from there, when you actually do leave Earth, kind of to like tie it back to like what Scott was like critiquing or whatever. The rest of the movie is like a series of alley-oops between big set pieces. Like it's like past Saturn onto the first planet, get off the planet, go, to Man's, and then shit goes awry on Man's planet. They get off, and then they have to link to the Endurance after Man like blew the airlock and the ship is spinning and stuff like that. That I experienced that airlock scene is like not like that of cinema, but it's like so powerful to me. Like the line, it's impossible, no, it's necessary. And then, he pushes himself to get it, like airlocked or whatever. Like I just find it so powerful. And then to like alley-oop into the skirting past the black hole, and then like the emotional impact of like, no, he's actually gonna drop into the black hole, to make sure she can get to the other planet or whatever.
Yeah.
There's a very particular pacing to Interstellar, and you may have to learn to love it, or you may not. It may not be your cup of tea, but like the whole movie contributes to my enjoyment. You know what I mean? It's like one of those.
I thought it was paced pretty well because like I paused it to pee, and it was already an hour in, and I was like, "Oh shit, it's already an hour into this movie."
Yeah.
And even Parker was like, "Damn, this is a long movie. I thought it was like just getting started." And I was like, "No, I mean, yeah, it is, but that is to me a great decision editing wise to have like the rocket lift off in the background as he's driving away. It hits like this weird, not weird, but just like surprising emotional punch, especially because Nolan, kind of like Wes Anderson, can be misconstrued as not the most emotional guy or understanding of emotions, but this is his
Agreed.
most emotional movie in a lot of ways.
Agreed.
Even if it's unconventional and done through the lens of certain editing and cinema.
Dude, right. No, there's a very real, I really want to like advocate for this. There's a very real heart and humanity and sentiment to Interstellar that is not like fluffy, friendly, cuddly shit. Like it's really gnarly humanity stuff. It like that. Just like the fact that he and his daughter reunite and she is that much older than him, like that heartbreaking, like that's the movie. The movie is like the difficulty of like that idea of like parents being memories for their children and stuff like that. And like the drive behind something like, leave my children behind on the hopes they might survive. It's very, it's difficult. It's challenging. It's difficult.
Well, and it's something that happens. So none of us have children, for context, for our listeners. Yeah, Sumner's happy.
I'm happy.
Adrian has cats. I am a foster parent to my roommate's cat. That's about it. But it is something that one of the reasons, other than me personally, I'm broke, that we don't have children or people of our age, we're all, about 30, is because of climate change and the climate crisis. It makes me genuinely worried for my offspring. That I also
Right.
have a bunch of mental illnesses I don't want to pass on. But um
That's real.
it's yeah, well, but it's something that this movie does kind of explore, like as rational as Nolan seems as a filmmaker, this movie does, I think, ultimately lie within the argument that like irrationality is what makes us human, and that's a beautiful thing. Um, Whether even with like Cooper being like, that's impossible. No, it's necessary. It's like
Yeah, yeah,
sort of like F you, this is irrational. F you, I'm Magellan. I'm gonna get on a boat and just go out into the ocean as far as I can. We don't know what's out there.
yeah,
And you
yeah.
even, dude, I mean, and even the idea of like people having to leave their children behind. There are people who leave their home country and like basically almost never see their families again and have to
True.
spend what meager money they
Yeah,
can to their families, whether it's their
yeah,
kids or their parents when they're like working a second job in university or
yeah.
like whatever it is. And so like there's as heightened as the circumstances are, like they're still kind of something that happens every day.
Yeah.
You know? And also the entire time dilation, his daughter ends up older than him. It is the emotional core of this movie. And it's the best thing about this movie, in my opinion. It's the thing that works the most. Uh,
Yeah.
I said this movie is very uneven, but it has some 9 out of 10 scenes. Yeah, yeah. Them coming up from the water planet and realizing how much time has passed, and him checking all those videos is
Bruh.
it's peak cinema. It's peak cinema. It's peak cinema.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
why it gets
Yeah.
memed. It gets memed a lot, but it's masterful.
Yeah, it is.
And
And that is a problem. I like sci-fi, but that's a problem with a lot of sci-fi. You read a lot of Silver Age sci-fi, and it's just not human enough. It's too focused on the science and not on the fiction. Or sometimes you read like old, especially like early Asimov. You're like, this guy has never talked to a woman other than his mother before. You can tell that about certain, because Nolan gets criticized for not writing women well. I'm not reading too much into this. I just think it's funny. I do think it's a funny, like Anne Hathaway's character is like the most hysterical, least logical person on this expedition. I'm not saying that's intentional, but she's like, no, we have to get the data from the water planet. And then she's like, no, but I'm in love with this other guy. We don't need to go to Matt Damon. We need to go to this other guy, And then she gives the hokey speech about like love is fifth dimensional or something, which I just completely, honestly, my eyes glaze over. I still think it's hokey. I still can't buy it. And this movie sometimes feel like
That's
Nolan.
where
Nolan
the
is a
filter.
no. It's
That's
a
where the
filter.
filter
I
pops
know.
up.
Nolan is a fifth dimensional being who made a three-dimensional movie for us mortals to try to understand, because he's like an alien
That's true.
he's an alien who just discovered
That's true.
emotions with this movie, it feels like.
well, Cooper's the
I
one
agree.
who's acting any way possible he can to get back to his family, even
That
though
is true. That
it's
is true.
ridiculous. So I wouldn't say that she's hysteric. I'd say that's pretty problematic to say, actually.
I was thinking of that because I was thinking of criticisms I've heard and don't necessarily disagree with, or don't necessarily agree with, I mean, rather.
I'd say it's equal.
About
I'd say they
Nolan's. No, I
both.
would agree more. It's equal. Cooper is definitely like,
He wears it on his
and then
sleeve.
also Matt Damon is, his character, man, is just,
Callow.
yeah, he's like, fuck it, fuck everything. This is hopeless. I want to go back to Earth.
Cooper wears it on his sleeve. She's more reserved with her intentions, but it is to
Yes.
show that like she's trying her best, but deep down she also does have those primal urges and needs.
Well, and part of the problem, like, if you read anything about astronauts, like, you have to be a superhuman to become an astronaut. Like, you have to be like top physical and mental fitness. You have to be able to like do calculus in your head and also 100 pull-ups. It's absolutely insane. There's that movie, The Right Stuff, where it's all about like the astronaut selection program, and it's absolutely insane. I could never.
No, dude, and there's the overview effects. Like that's like the psychological change that occurs in people that like are in spacecraft that rise above like a certain point in the stratosphere or whatever. There's a recurring demonstrable psychological shift in like just about like most people see the Earth from space or get high enough like on those commercial space flights or whatever to get that perspective or whatever. That's what I view it. I can't help but think of First Man watching this film like often or whatever, and like the overview effect is what I take First Man to be about. It's about like that kind of like separation from here to there or whatever. But like we gotta linger because like I feel like it Brand's and Hathaway's characters, love recurring through time and space, like speech spiel or whatever. It's one of the hinges of the movie. And that's what I mean.
I think it's a broken hinge, but go on.
Well, so fair. Like that's how you take it or whatever. But like Nolan makes it a very like you have to have an opinion about that part of the movie to have an opinion on the rest of the movie. And so, like, just to take an example, I feel like if this point that her character were making were perhaps written differently, or if the editing was maybe if the point were made with like more grace. I don't know how to tell Christopher Nolan to edit a more graceful movie, but you take the point that I'm making. I feel like the movie could have been better if the point were handled a bit differently or whatever, or a bit like, like it more, with more exposition or whatever. But the way you framed it, Scott, of Nolan, what is it, that our irrationality makes us human. I feel like that is an effective framing for what he is going for. I don't know if I think that's what he is going for. But like I view love transcending time and space as a point that runs parallel to Cooper literally combating Dr. Mann's nihilism in the furthest reaches of space. Like it's this one man who is telling Cooper, your drive to see your children is meaningless, yet I am going to try and save my own ass. It's like utterly nihilistic and like self-defeating or whatever. And so alongside like that point is making, I feel the way I take at this point in my life the love transcending time and space or whatever is like underneath that umbrella of like the irrational being rational. I'm thinking of like the numerous like list of like spiritual pantheons that have accounted for stuff like sexuality and love and like goddesses and gods embodying those forces in the universe as like playing a directly generative role in like the ongoingness of the universe. And Nolan is like he's material. He's nitty gritty, he's material or whatever. But I take the point that he is making. Like I take it as like an observation on like the force of attraction. And perhaps if like the point were handled a bit differently, I would be showing up saying this is why I think Interstellar is Christopher Nolan's greatest film. But I stand for Interstellar. Yeah.
I understand that. I'm not included. I just think her comparing love to gravity is just like it's psychobabble. It's just like technobabble for sci-fi film, and it's a level of technobabble that undercuts what is supposed to be the emotional weight of that scene.
Yeah, I'd agree with that.
I used to be hard on that, and I feel now that there's a point to be made on a meta level of him, Christopher Nolan, who's normally such a hard nose and so grounded, for him to take a movie that is backed by a theoretical physicist and to put this in place means a lot to him. And also the fact that like this is science fiction. When you go into a black hole, you're not going to fall into a fifth dimensional tesseract. At that point, to me, it's like fantasy. And so like, and within this universe, within this film, technically she was right. Love is determined by, can be measured in some way within this film. And I think that was kind of just like him trying to bat away, like Sumner said, nihilism. And when I was 20 years old, I was such a nihilist about shit. I was such a staunch guy who just deconstructed his faith, being an annoying Reddit atheist about shit. And so that bothered me for so long. And then now I just I kind of see what he was trying to go for a little bit more now.
I feel like I can't help but watch Interstellar and feel like Christopher Nolan was trying to rescue rationality itself and like scientific exploration itself from like the new atheist crowd. Like, you know, like the Richard Dawkins and the Christopher Hitchens and stuff like that or whatever. And I'm not criticizing those dudes and saying they had nothing to contribute, you know, to society or whatever. But there's a cynicism and there's a kind of like a baked in nihilism to some of the thinking that bubbled into like public awareness at the end of the 2000s or whatever, that Christopher Nolan was like, oh, we can get a little more hippie with it.
Yeah,
it's
because
something to that effect.
I'd forgotten about the whole aspect at the beginning of all the post-truth shit about the daughter saying the Apollo missions were real and her getting in trouble for it. And so obviously he was touching on that.
Shit's crazy.
A little bit ahead of its time.
Which is ahead of its time because now we have TikTok conspiracy theorists and nobody believes anything anymore. And we're completely in this post-truth era, barreling toward the second Trump campaign, like second Trump presidency. So also, before I forget, when you were saying earlier about that whatever overlook effect, I forgot what you called it, about when people
the overview effect
effect about when people see the Earth from orbit, and like have a different connection to humanity. Have you seen the video of William Shatner comes back from space after going up with Jeff Bezos?
Yeah,
and Bezos doesn't get it. He just doesn't get. Shatner is like trying to talk about, like, he's talking about that very thing, the overview effect or whatever, like how much it's affecting him. And like Bezos is more focused on popping champagne because it's his own personal conquest. And it's I couldn't write that in a script. And
I know.
Right.
I would shit on you if you did.
Yeah, you would, like, it's one of those things where like you would be like, this is too on the nose, like what Captain Kirk comes back with Jeff Bezos. Like it's insane. You know, that's why I'm like, fuck these guys. You know, fuck these guys. Fuck these guys, and you know what? Fuck United Healthcare. I'll say it right now.
It was like right after. It was like I was really thinking about it, how 10 years ahead of its time. So when the dust comes around and he says, "All right, gang, let's mask up," I couldn't help but chuckle. I was like, "God damn it!"
Yeah. And you have these people like coughing up dust, you know, but they don't want to move. They're like, I'm not wearing a mask, what am I, gay? Blah, 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 you know, ahead of its time.
Am I misunderstanding the aspect of, because like, obviously, I guess it's not, because these 5-dimensional beings are seeing outside of time because time is not linear to them. But if we were just focusing on the third dimension, wouldn't it be paradoxical that he sent himself to this point? Because they figure out the dust is binary code sent technically from the future in their eyes, but the coordinates he sent.
What is your question?
Just the paradoxical cool aspect within our vision. It would seem paradoxical that he's the ghost in her bedroom, that like it sent him on this mission in the first place. He's the one who sent out the coordinates to NASA, that facility and everything.
Right. Well, this gets into a point where like you're like, is there free will? Or is everything predetermined, which is something the 5th dimensional humans would know. It's kind of like how they find the body of the Terminator from Terminator 1 and Cyberdyne uses that to make the chip that later turns into the Terminator. Like it's a closed loop and you never really know where it comes from. Yeah, that's just
I really like,
but I think it's just interesting that like really it could be paradoxical from what we perceive, but from a 5th dimension it probably is not. I don't know. Also, like there's Cooper is the intersection of blue collar working class man, also with crazy high concept sci-fi astronaut shit. And it's
Yeah.
like so purposeful, but also just interesting because it is a cross between Jonathan and Christopher's script, but it works well, I think, and that's why it probably helps speak to so many people, because the fact that this movie is so mainstream is impressive to me. And at first I was like, 10 years ago, I could be kind of gatekeepy about like high concept films and stuff because I was a prick. But it's so cool now, like to see how many people adore a movie that is speaking in terms of just all these different science concepts. A lot of them are very grounded, even though
Right.
some
And,
crazy.
Yeah.
to y'all's point, the whole love transcends time and space thing, as hokey as I won't defend it, I still think it's hokey. But clearly, if it's still having this effect on this wide range of people, it has to be doing something, because people are not just coming to this movie to see like good CG of Saturn.
Yeah.
They're not just
No.
coming here for like they advertise that they worked hard with Kip Thorne, the theoretical physicist or whatever, to like
Yeah.
accurately model how we believe wormholes and stuff would actually form. But
Yeah.
I'm not checking the math on that when I'm at the ticket kiosk.
Yeah.
I'm not worried about that. I'm looking to have like a good time at the movies. So, in the movie's defense, I will say, obviously, like, even though it doesn't work for me, it works for a lot of people.
And this guy is
Bro.
like so different from, because now it's like there's so much anti-intellectualism going on with certain political spectrums, political sides of that. And but this guy is not only is he an old school farmer who, when she gets in trouble,
Yeah.
he says, well, I'm going to take her to a good old fashioned baseball game. And he's also someone who's defending the Apollo mission. So he's like pro science while also being like, well, she doesn't need to be punished. She needs an old fashioned baseball game. And like, he also has this struggle because they say, we're explorer. Oh, he says we're explorers, not caretakers, because they're saying
Yeah.
they're the caretaker generation. And I was watching, Matthew McConaughey was recently asked about this character. Like, I saw this video like 3 days ago. I was like, wow,
Yeah.
perfect timing. And he was like, I disagree with Coop. He shouldn't have left his kids there and this and that. I'm like, well, he happened to get shit going and figure out what needed to be done. So
Yeah,
I will
well,
say no. I have to make an observation there too. The same things. Cooper says the same thing of leaving his kid to go travel in space that Brand does of wanting to go to Edmund's planet.
yeah.
She said I want to do this, and because I do does not make it wrong. That specific thing, they both made the exact same point. And the point that she had for her partner is akin to, but like, because like Cooper loved flying more than he wanted to stay for his kids. Like that's part of the like in fluffy humanity like of the movie to me or whatever. That's part of why I imagine McConaughey disagrees, with
Yeah.
that decision or whatever, is that it's speaking to like the quantifiable driving power of love or whatever. Yeah.
But also he like, it was interesting that he did bring up his faith briefly in that interview, that he is like a Christian and believes in certain things. So like that kind of influenced his decision,
Yeah.
which I find interesting. For him to play that kind of character must have been, I don't know, strange.
I don't think Cooper necessarily has to be an atheist, though.
I know it was just Matthew McConaughey had just felt like he needed to bring that up in that particular question about Coop. I don't know. It just
No, it's telling about him. I think Matthew McConaughey is the right actor. Matthew McConaughey is such a weird actor, and he's so dependent on the role.
Dude,
but I mean, he is the perfect fusion of like he has that blue collar country sensibility when you hear him in interviews, but he's also a weird arty farty actor. So he fits that. He's not a scientist, but he fits that with Cooper.
He doesn't. I do not believe you can effectively separate Interstellar as like a pop cultural artifact from the 3 to 4 year span of McConaughey's career. It felt because Dallas Buyers Club, True Detective, dude, like he has been on record about what playing Russ Cole in True Detective did to his psyche and the way it forced his reevaluation with like his faith and like all that shit.
How did it affect his briefly? How did it affect his psyche? Because I've never seen True Detective.
Essentially, if you watch True Detective, like Russ, wait, if you watch that was my B.
What happened?
Did you lose me? Can you hear me?
You're like frozen.
Yeah, I accidentally.
There you are.
You're good now. Yeah.
Yeah, I hit a wrong button. Essentially, Rust in True Detective is the most convincing, accurate nihilist you've ever met. Like he is so well written. And it's with this, like he used to be an undercover cop, so he gets acid flashbacks and shit. So he's aware of the expanse of the universe. And he's like, no, I know there is nothing. Like, I know there is nothing. And McConaughey's not like that. But the character is so compelling that he has, like, spoken about how it forced a kind of reevaluation with his beliefs and shit like that. And I really feel you can draw parallels between Cooper in Interstellar and Russ Cole in True Detective quite easily. Like there is a cosmic exploration, it undercurrent there. And I think to this broader stretch of his career. Because dude, he's so good in this movie. He's just he's on some shit, dude.
Yeah.
He's on some shit.
What was he playing with, dude? He went from Mud, Dallas Buyers Club, True Detective, Interstellar. What a fucking run.
Lincoln Lawyer, was that him?
Yeah, but that was just okay.
That's
not his fault.
It was still big for his career.
Yeah.
It
was just like that early to mid 2010s Matthew McConaughey was crazy. I don't know.
Yeah, he was on some shit.
Sometimes it just happens.
I think he got a new agent. I think he fired his agent and got a new one.
Well, it was Mud that Nolan saw an early screening of Mud, was like, this is the guy. I want him. So
that's awesome. Yeah, dude. Arkansas represent.
And like, what's Michael Caine's character's name in this movie?
He's Brand too.
Huh?
He's a Dr. Brand too.
Dr. Brand. I keep calling him Alfred in my head because I'm a dumbass.
That's fair.
John Brand.
Yeah, okay.
John Alfred. Okay. No, but it's just, I get we're getting to it. And I know that they were going to go on the mission anyway. It's so funny to me how quickly he's like, well, we need you to be the pilot. And he's like, oh shit.
Yes.
It is one of those things. It is a plot contrivance, but it's a fifth dimensional being like, Cooper has to do this.
And I mean, he was led to this place. So they
why does Cooper have to do this? Because Cooper already did this. So we have to make sure that Cooper does. It gets into time travel shenanigans.
But they do have the setup of, like, for 50 years we've been measuring these gravitational anomalies and how it has interfered with this and that. So, Also, I want to say that little girl, it's uncanny how well cast she was as a young Jessica Chastain.
Right?
Yeah,
crazy.
That is true.
She's good in it. She looks like Jessica Chastain, I do feel kind of bad for her because I was looking at her IMDb and it's like she did that Nutcracker in the Four Realms movie,
brother.
Which has, I think, that was at the tail end of these like Twilight knockoffs where like, let's have a bunch of like folklore, Jack the Giant Slayer, all this stuff.
Yeah.
And also I think it was mixed with like post-converted 3D. Maybe it was shot in 3D. I don't know. I didn't see the movie. Nobody did. And I feel like it really hurt her career. But then also maybe she just like became an adult and was like, acting, I want to do other stuff. She was in Black Beauty in 2020. Okay. And she's in
Black Beauty. They did a Black Beauty movie?
In 2020. Might have been straight to streaming. I don't know.
Well, yeah, 2020 it was. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, that's a Disney Plus streaming thing. They did Black Beauty.
And I get like, feel like
She played the horse.
I feel like Coop. First of all, Cooper is his last name. So did he name his son Cooper or what? What? I don't get that.
No, he's Joseph Cooper, and then Tom Cooper is Casey Affleck slash.
But then he says he's named. Casey Affleck's character says he named. I thought he said he named one of the kids Coop.
No, I don't think so.
Okay.
No one can ever.
Wait, you mean one of?
It's one of Interstellar's like features. It's like no one can ever remember like what's happening with the names of the offspring. Like it's not possible. It's not that everyone forgets. It's that it's not possible to remember.
I thought it was like a Super Mario Bros. Movie situation. Mario, and Luigi Mario. But no, but the I will say, because he jumps right to it, which I appreciate for the movie. I don't need a whole training montage of him getting back in the rhythm of things. But it just, I don't care. Like, I really just don't care.
Yeah.
But I will say it is a unrealistic time frame that he has to say goodbye to his daughter and stuff. It's like, okay.
But it works dramatically.
Yeah, it does. And I will say when on rewatch, the book dropping to the floor as he starts to leave her room hit way harder this time because I was like, oh shit.
Yeah, they could have written up the angle of like synchronicity and like following the love. You know, like they could have written that harder, you know, and made it more like clear or whatever. But it's like, I kind of like that it's like little anomalies through time. It's not consistent. It's faint.
That is interesting how grounded, because Nolan likes, I mean, look how grounded he made Batman. So like, that's why the juxtaposition for love bullshit in this movie was more fascinating to me. But also, it's also in effect, practically, when to great effect when we first get to space, and a lot of the exterior shots are completely silent, and it just adds to it a lot. And when it cuts to the interior, especially because the copy I got was the 4K IMAX, where it had the anamorphic widescreen for normal shots, and then it had the regular IMAX format. I don't know if you guys watched it like that, but it's a great way to watch it if you don't mind it switching aspect ratios all the time.
Yeah, no, I did the same one because mine was switching aspect ratios.
Yeah. And so I was like, man, because it's a fucking annoying that the IMAX re-release was so limited. It was like,
it didn't come to Little Rock.
It only came to like 10 theaters, I think, because they were trying to be weird and only do it, I think, on like film IMAX, like 70 millimeter. And it's like, dude, come on. But also, I think
that's great. I would love to have that option, but I don't live in New York.
Yeah, I don't think our lame ass IMAX would have shown it anyway, because they picked
the anything Warner Brothers does with anything of Christopher Nolan's from now on will be solely geared towards the ends of getting back in good graces with Christopher Nolan. That's not for audiences. That is for Warner Brothers and Christopher Nolan solely.
Why did they fall out? Do we know? Is there
Tenet, COVID?
You think that's it?
Yeah, no, it was definitely he had beef.
Yeah.
Because he was just impatient, I guess, about Tenet. And it's like, well, you know, I kind of get, you know, we should probably push this, or like
there's that, but there's throwing it aiming without a conversation. That's really, he felt done really raw business wise. That's why he took his business.
Well, yeah, it was also like they were trying to do that thing, which they did with The Matrix, which made it bomb, and a few other things. Was like same day on Max, also in theaters, and they were trying to push for that for Tenet, and he was like, no, fuck you.
Yeah.
Which I get, but also there's the side of like, if you would have pushed Tenet to 2021, I think you would have fared much better.
If you had
it's a fairly well documented fallout.
If you had pushed Tenet to the next quarter, it would have been better. You know, because I feel like even when Godzilla vs. Kong came out a couple months later or whatever, like I think people were more ready to go back to the theater.
That was the movie where I was like, wow, people are coming back.
Yeah, and that's also a more accessible movie, to be fair.
Well, yeah, but
indeed.
But it was funny as fuck that they cut him that royalty check as like a sign of good faith, and
That was pussy shit,
he
dude.
took that
He just
check
had
and
the
was
he
like,
just had the second biggest movie of the year, and it was close. And they cut him like $1 million check. Like, hey, come back. Like, come on.
and he took
I
it and
don't
was
think
like,
so.
thanks, pocketed it, didn't come back. So
Bruh.
funny.
Okay. Yeah. I want Chris to win. I want him to be as unreasonable as he likes, and I want
They do like
him to.
they keep the exterior silent for a while, but then as they do that first docking, they slowly start to pull in the music, and you really start to you were equating that music with Earth and Earth's problems, and now when you're putting that over space and their exploration, you get the wider scope of what they're going for with the score, and
Yep.
it becomes very powerful very quickly.
Shit's dank.
Yeah,
Man, yeah. It's a
so
powerful
cool.
film. I took notes watching it just to see if anything came in, and I wrote emotionally stirring film.
Yeah, because like you think the tip of the iceberg is okay, wow, damn, he's gonna have to go down for 14 months and he's gonna miss 14 months of his family at the minimum because that's how long it takes to get to Saturn. And then he gets up and Murph doesn't want to get on camera. It's like, okay, well, at least I'll only be gone a couple of years. It's like, oh, fuck.
And it's cold, bruh. It's gnarly shit.
And like one of my beefs to this day, like I get like there's a lot of high concept shit going on in this movie for modern audience or regular audiences. Like, but you can show how a wormhole works without having to explain it to Cooper. This guy's going on this space mission. He knows what a wormhole is. You don't have to draw it on fucking paper and show him and him reacting for the first time while in flight in space. It's
Right.
fucking
Okay. I see what
stupid.
you're saying. It works for the audience.
I know, but
Yeah, it
that has
works for
always
me.
bothered me.
That's fair.
You should have had, maybe it would have been better if Cooper had explained it to Murph or somebody.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. But also like 24, I feel like it's just it's crazy because it now we have so many movies and plots that deal with time distortion and stuff like that that like people wouldn't have to have that basic explanation as much, I don't think. But I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah, I always found that really funny though.
Yeah, it is one of those things where, Marvel has portals and they don't have to explain it.
Yeah,
I think Nolan just wanted to. But I do think
I
if
get
you're
that.
that far into the movie, the audience will just buy, like, yeah, this is a magic wormhole that takes you to another place. I understood it because I like science fiction and I read A Wrinkle in Time when I was a kid and I understand this stuff. But I
And
That's
mean,
fair.
I understand the broad concepts. I don't understand the math or anything. I have no idea how the
Yeah.
fuck people figure this shit out. It makes no sense to me.
yeah, it's like as realistic as it can get, obviously, because we don't have wormholes.
Yeah, because at the end of the movie, we're
But
in a
I'm saying like
library for
the
what feels
realistic
like
nature of how
45
they
minutes.
shoot them going through a wormhole still looks mind blowing to me. Even then,
Yeah.
it just looks so cool. But also this and off when he's coming out of the Tesseract and stuff like that, it also looks genuinely scary and horrifying to me, like borderline horror to me in a sci-fi way because it's just the aspect of the unknown and cosmic.
Cosmic horror.
Yeah. It looks
It,
like the abyss.
it is
Like it looks
freaky.
like a void, or it's very like there's a really unsettling, like
Yeah.
horrific element to the
No,
movie.
Cthulhu and Nyarlathotep are going to jump out at you. It's cosmic horror. That's what it is. No,
Right.
really, it's Eldritch is what it is.
That's right. Yeah.
Also, like until I rewatched it, I forgot there was a fourth person on their ship. He's so forgettable. When he dies on that water planet,
Wes
I'm like, oh
Bentley.
yeah, this guy died. I
Oh yeah,
was
that
like,
guy's from
Probably.
Jonesboro, by the way. He's in
Yes, he
West
is.
Bentley. He's
oh, shit.
he's in Hunger Games, I think. Um,
I will say that's a little like I don't know if we needed all four of them developed fully, but I'm just saying, like I forgot he was even an aspect of this movie.
no,
He's the senseless casualty. Like
Yeah.
he's like, oh, we were
Yeah.
unprepared and he got shafted, like, hey, that's how it goes at the edge of space.
and that's honestly, that's one of the scariest aspects of a film I've ever seen to me, just for personal reasons of like the idea that 7 years passes in an hour. That's scarier to me than a lot of stuff in like actual horror movies and stuff. Just
Yeah,
like,
it's kind of like a Click
It's a
when he accidentally fast forwards through his children's life. Cooper's so obsessed with work. Nolan watched Click and was like, I should put this in space.
that's like, it's some of these are like concepts that are scary because they're just so hard to grasp the reality of as someone who's just watching it on screen. Like they were gone for 23 years, and you try to start to think about the other guy who was on the ship that waited that whole time, which, in a way could be its own movie of like dealing with that. Not really, but I'm just saying, like, 23 years. You try to conceptualize it in your brain, you kind of have to stop yourself because it's just like too much to be alone on a ship for that long. How would you not kill yourself for one? But just like,
it's horror tinged and it's mind bending. Like
it is,
it's like Inception. It really twists like your sense of like empathetic.
it gets to
Experience.
places that a lot of movies don't for me in that kind of scary aspect. So
Yes, it does. It's
it's
an otherworldly tension.
Yeah.
And like in the hands of somebody so masterful, it creates a really specific sensation.
And
like it being in the throes of like Interstellar's drama.
The 1-2 punch of that and seeing their well, I forget his name, but the other guy, to see him aged.
Romilly.
You have to wrestle
Romilly.
with that.
David Gyasi is Romilly.
Yeah, and then the 1-2 punch of Coop immediately going to check the messages. Just that's when like, okay,
Indeed.
This is Nolan firing on all cylinders.
Best scene of the movie.
I was like, I didn't know he was capable of this before that, and I really, like you said, it is one of the best scenes of the movie, but it's an emotional triumph and to me a cinematic achievement because it's stuck with so many people over the years.
Yep.
It's something so emotionally devastating that like just the concept alone you can tell has fucked with and also touched a lot of people.
Yeah, man.
And
it's a fire movie.
Like really think about within 10 seconds seeing your son at 16 and then seeing him again at 26. 10 seconds have passed and now he's jumping on the screen as a grown man. Like that is bizarre and terrifying.
Yeah, it is. It's challenging.
Yeah. So cool.
Yeah, man.
Yeah. And then when Anne Hathaway, she decides, first of all, I think how powerful it is to me. What a great way to kind of bring in the focus of we're going to spend all this time trying to get to this guy who's saying his world is good. It's good to go.
Yeah.
And all of it was for him because he was a coward and didn't want to die alone out there. But also they're intercutting that sequence with Murph as an adult and her working with Anne Hathaway's dad. It's a great way to intercut it without breaking tension because both tensions are building at the same time of her figuring out that plan A was a sham while he's on his deathbed, telling her at the same time that they're figuring out that man knew this too and is also a prick and wants to quote unquote ensure the survival of humanity with the fertilized eggs, but obviously he's just a coward.
What is the plan with who's going to raise those fertilized eggs? Is Dr. Brand going to have to raise like 500 people?
Well, it's gonna.
It's not clear.
They said they were going to start with like 6 people, and then go from there and let them.
Is that robot going to teach them?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, totally.
I guess I don't. Yeah, okay. Genuine question. I also too much Dylan Thomas in this movie. They keep repeating that really overrated "Do not go gentle into the goodnight" poem, and by the time Michael Caine squeaking it out as he's dying instead of just answering Jessica Chastain's question for dramatic purposes. I'm over it.
Well, that's the point, though. It's supposed to ring hollow when it was supposed to be inspiring at first. Now it rings hollow.
Yeah, that's true.
Like that's kind of like the darkness.
I think, and I'm biased on this because I had to write an essay on it in high school and got really tired of it. I had it on not on Interstellar, on Dylan Thomas on that poem.
Yeah. But it does get, like I said, the intercutting gets interesting. Because then we also see that Cooper's son is obviously taking on the farm, but he's in denial about the situation right in front of him, and he won't like let his family leave and shit like that. And his wife and his son both have a cough, and then he already has a son that's died, and it's like, okay, this is a great way to amplify the drama. So it's not like we're cutting back to boring shit. It's like, okay, this is keeping the momentum going. It's cut in a very good way, I will say. Also, when they get to Dr. Mann's outpost, when they're coming down there, they should have been like, fuck this. This is a frozen wasteland. We already wasted our time. Like, this is
I have the same thing. I have the same thing when they go to the water planet. Do they not just see it's full of water and that there's nothing there? Like, what data is there?
Yeah.
How do they even stop at that planet? Can they not tell it's uninhabited? Like, can they not scan it from the atmosphere? It's I have to suspend my disbelief on some things here.
So we're in the little quibbles territory.
Yeah,
we are.
Yeah.
We're at the end of the recording quibbles territory at this point, where I'm bringing up writing essays on
valid though they are.
No, because like, but also it's like he tries to make the best of like, I don't want to go down there because too many years will pass, and oh, you're thinking about your family too much. It's like, oh, here's a compromise. Here's how we'll do it. We'll go down for like 30 minutes. It's like, okay, why even bother at all if that's all you're gonna do anyway? But because like, I don't know, that's just funny to me. But
No, I'm sorry.
the whole thing is that Alfred, whatever his name is,
Brand,
supposedly has already solved it already, his big equation, but there's not enough data because it's unobservable because it's in a black hole. It's like, okay, well, that's brutal.
how do they fly into a black hole without getting ripped apart? Do they explain that?
Well, it's a fictional fantasy science movie.
Okay.
That's the thing about black holes is we don't know for a fact you'll get ripped apart.
No,
Actually,
yeah,
no,
we
we
do.
do. Yeah, we do.
I've
Yeah,
heard
you'll
Neil
get.
deGrasse Tyson and talk
Yeah,
about it.
right. You get spaghetti.
No, it's called spaghettification. And then I think Jon Stewart or somebody asked him, like, does it hurt? And he's like, what do you mean, does it hurt? Yes, you're getting ripped apart by gravity. It's like,
Yeah, it's wild. Crazy.
Also, like the
Fair
line,
enough.
they saved their F-bomb for a great line where Coop's like, you fucking coward, talking to man. It's so brutal because it's so true. Because like having them bring all that. Oh, I think that's a great casting too. It didn't take me out of the movie really. It's like, oh, Matt Damon's. I mean, I don't know. He's the Martian, and now he's also in this. But
it takes me out of it a little bit, but not in a bad way. And also, it's smart casting in that Matt Damon doesn't play villains a lot. So it's good to be like, oh, Matt Damon, we're here. We're hanging out with Matt Damon in this movie. I'm glad that he's in it.
Oh, he's going to be so important to our plight.
Yeah, and then he just throws 1,000 wrenches into everything.
Yeah, and then we get like he flies up to the ship and they attempt to dock, and then this part's intercut with adult Murph going into a room and seeing the watch not working correctly, and they're supposed to get his family out of there. Well, she lights the corn on fire to say like, hey, not just as a distraction, but also symbolically, like, we have to accept that shit's fucked. What can we do at this point? And I like the detail that he's like, what are you gonna go underground like everyone else? Like, I mean, I don't know. What do you want me to do? Like, you're just as unwilling to accept it as I'm willing to like I don't know. I guess they're both in denial in different ways, but also, what
Yeah.
can you do?
That's also good world building to be like, we go underground like everyone else.
Yeah, but the I like that Coop at a point accepts like, okay, everything's fucked. We don't have enough fuel to get back to Earth, but we can try and save these eggs. It's just like a beat by beat of him having to accept that he's probably not going to ever see his family again. But the first time when they come up from that ship, he can't even. Well, actually, when they're stuck on the planet, he can't even. He's like having a breakdown, and then how much years they lost going to man's planet, et cetera, et cetera. But just to get back to a possibility of being able to slingshot themselves using a black hole, they have that docking sequence, and that docking sequence has become famous for good reason. It's cool that this movie has such its kind of action scenes, quote unquote, are unconventional to a modern audience of like, we have to dock this ship. We have to turn at the same time it's turning. And it's such like it's certain sequences like that. I'm like, yeah, this is cool that this is so popular. It's one of those. The fact that a docking scene and it's not even about dicks gets talked about that much is cool as hell.
The 1-2 punch of the docking scene and then into crossing the black hole is
Yeah.
really impressive. The black hole has less drama than the docking scene or whatever. But yeah, like especially like if you're watching it like and your speakers are loud enough or whatever, the
Yeah.
way the score hits in the docking sequence is like it's like the superhuman feat that unlocks the Tesseract. Like that's not like the canon of the movie or whatever, but
Yeah.
it's like the thing that separates Cooper from the rest of like every other human is like, oh, okay, like we'll build you a Tesseract. It's like
But it's
yeah,
also
and
very insanely well blocked because normally that kind of sequence could be very disorienting if done wrong. And it could be all over the place. But it's so easy to follow with your eye and you don't even feel sick or anything. And I don't know. I don't remember if I felt weird, but sometimes movies, especially when you see them in IMAX and stuff, when they do like certain POV shots, I can get kind of queasy. I remember like I would go see IMAX, those 40-minute IMAX documentaries back in the day when we had that Science IMAX near the airport.
yeah,
And I would get a little car sick, some of them, because they would have like roller coaster POVs and stuff. But I just, yeah, kudos to the planning and blocking for this kind of disorienting ass scene because
it's
it
great
works.
work, Chris. Good job,
Yeah.
Chris.
But also it does a great, like I was saying, to lesser effect with the way that they show how a black hole works. Okay, we're gonna bend this piece of paper. That works. The little nudges here and there to help the regular audience out. It feels almost like the way they explain things of like, oh, we're talking about using a black hole to ride our way back to the planet we need to get to. It's like it's something a captain on a pirate ship would say in the sea. It's like something someone immediately can understand with the way they say it.
Right. It's like, we need to use the energy of this here whirlpool.
Yeah, exactly. But
Yeah.
also like Treasure Planet did it first. Now I know they used a supernova to ride the wave, literally like a fucking pirate ship, and it's not the same as a black hole, but like it does still to this day make me think of Treasure Planet.
Is that movie worth watching?
Treasure Planet, hell yeah, dude. That's one of the best Disney movies. Dude, that movie, yeah, dude, that holds up. I will say that. And it's such
No.
a like a very particular aesthetic of mixing like light, almost like not completely steampunk, but mixed with like maritime. I don't know. It's
Sure.
just strange.
Sure. I just remember I was gonna go see it with a friend when it came out, and then his mom just assumed the movie started at seven and didn't check show times. And then we did what didn't have any show times, and then we left. That's my experience with Treasure Planet. It's really stupid.
back when you had to check the paper for
Yep.
Happens.
stuff like
Yeah.
that. Now, let's get to the black hole and the tesseract, because
Okay.
he enters a 5-dimensional representation of time in 3-dimensional space. Now, the idea of writing this down, but now you have to conceptualize this into a set, which is partially practical. A lot of it is actually practical. That is the mind-blowing aspect of me, of the fact that Nolan was able to quantify this into a physical set. That is really cool. And it's a very creative kind of way. The fact that it can be so high concept, but also audiences can easily figure out like that what he's able to perceive infinitely of this particular moment in time, I think is a triumph. And I'm not going to say it like challenged me hard or anything. And that's one of the reasons when I was 20, I was just desperate for something just beyond what I could even comprehend. But I was looking for the wrong thing. And I appreciate how digestible this kind of a concept can be in a large scale blockbuster. And in reality, I wasn't ready for it yet in a weird backwards way. And now I appreciate this sequence a lot more. So.
I think it's brilliant how he conceptualizes it and makes it palatable for a general audience. I know this is the emotional climax of the film. It goes on way too long for me.
It was not
I
too long.
Yeah, I don't know why I was watching it and I was just ready to be over with this scene. I know that's insane.
I thought it was kind of short, in my
I don't
opinion.
know.
Yeah, that's snappy to me too.
It's a weird thing where I'm like it's so hokey and it's like so I know. I'm like and he's like okay, so gravity can affect things through time, but he's pushing I know I'm overthinking it. He's pushing the books. That's not gravity. That's just normal force. That's like a physical force. It
Well, the
falls
book
down as
falling
gravity.
though, the book falling.
The book falling is gravity.
This is
That's what we're
only what
talking
he's able to
about.
perceive it within this space in 3 dimensions.
That is true. You could hand wave it and be like, we don't know what the 5D humans are. Because that's one of their things. He says that the 5D humans, which he kind of just figures out, he kind of just guesses that they're human.
True.
But for the audience's sake, really. Which I do think that's, I enjoy it. Like, it was humans all along. I enjoy that twist when it's done well. But it's he says that the future humans 5D humans can't go to a specific time and space they can't go to a specific place and time, like all of time is kind of simultaneous to them.
Yeah.
It's a lot like the what do you call it, Troglodyteans or whatever in Slaughterhouse 5, if you've ever read that. There's some Slaughterhouse 5 in this.
Yeah.
I am looking at that physical set though, and it's pretty cool. I mean, they pretty much built one section of it and then just mirrored it,
Yeah.
which is and had them up on wires, which is pretty awesome.
Yeah. And like, yeah, I don't know. I think that's like, okay, he's moving the clock the whole time. I don't know. I guess I am a little softer now. Even though I found it cool to begin with, I just thought I don't know. I just think of like what this film has done for younger generations. I think it's helped a lot more than a lot of other films. So I respect it more, even if it's not 100% my biggest sci-fi cup of tea. I think it's really cool. And it does take you far enough into a place that it's going to leave you, most people, reeling a bit, trying to think a little bit more. Even
Yes.
they're going to get that underlying theme of love, like, but also like what we can do as a society. I don't know. And like there
The
is
movie and the story, like the story the movie tells and the movie itself are not like unsimilar to each other. Like I love Interstellar because it does what I want. It takes me to like the furthest expanses of my imagination. And like that, I don't think we could have understood that facet of the film, like even in the first few years after it was out. The way like the broader context is percolated and the way it hits now. Yeah, it just hits super uniquely, like a classic.
and I respect that he gets to Cooper Station, and he gets this illusion of his old life, and he's still focused on the future, where we're going, because like we can't just stagnate here on this idealistic kind of illusion of what life used to be like on Earth.
Yeah.
We have to keep going, and it's like matched that with like him finally reuniting with his daughter, which is also a cool concept of your daughter is 50 years older than you, and like you get the reunion finally, but it's at the deathbed. I think that's the perfect way to do it, of like,
I
okay, you
concur.
get to see each other
It's
one more
great.
time.
It's again, it's maybe my second favorite scene of the movie.
She pushes him too. She's like, she's Anne Hathaway's still out there. Just you know what you have to do. Like,
Yeah,
go
which
back.
is a
Yeah,
great
man.
character arc. Is like, no, now you have to leave because now
Yeah.
I understand that you were fighting for the future and you need to keep doing that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Man. Hits.
So there is that futurist aspect that I found very powerful at the end. And yeah, I think I'm glad I rewatched it, and I'm not gonna be as hard on it because I was a dick, and I made a meme that kind of blew up a little bit, and I feel bad about it now, but it was like the poster for Interstellar, but I took the text out and I wrote boneless 2001. Like,
Wow.
that was like
Yeah,
4 or 5
it's a
years ago.
it's a very sentimental movie.
But
It
it was
wears
just
its
like
emotions on its sleeve. It makes
the
sense.
more edits and the more discussions I saw on TikTok from people 5, 10 years younger than me, the more I was like,
Crazy.
okay, I'm gonna let this generation have it. I'm gonna quit being a dick, and I'm gonna see the good that it's done.
They
And
can
that's
Yeah.
have it. I'm gonna go read Richard Dawkins right now.
yeah.
Yeah, bro.
I love it.
To space.
To
I remember
space.
a certain I went to the beach with a certain woman, a girl and her family and Casher, and they were dating at the time, and that's what she was reading on the beach, the God Delusion. I was like, fuck
Tracks, bro.
off.
Hey, man. People can read what they like. You know.
Anyway, that's my take on Interstellar 10
That's
years later.
Interstellar, 10th anniversary. Proud of it. Well, I had nothing to do with it. I'm proud of. You know.
You gave
I'm glad
your
I'm glad you made
$8.
this movie, Sumner.
Yeah, me too. Yeah, it was a good time. It was a nice couple hours. Good chat. Good
For
chat,
sure.
boys.
Now, next week, we're doing another years later, but it's an anniversary episode because 5 years ago, we partially started this show, The Harbor, with
Nice.
a review of Rise of Skywalker. And boy, that was an interesting episode. Interesting first episode. So we're gonna
Yeah.
have Dylan back on,
Nice.
do a 5 years later of Rise of Skywalker, just as a fun little end of the year December discussion.
Yeah, that'll be fun, man.
So tune in for that, ladies and gentlemen, and anyone else watching. We will be doing that as a little, not a Christmas cast, but something similar.
Something
Other
like
than
that.
that, you can watch over 160 episodes just like this on a bunch of different movies. Go check those out. I have a book that I wrote. If you wanted to really support the channel, check that out. It's in the description below. We have a tie-in film. We have video essays on this channel now. We have many ways to support us. So hours and hours and hours of content, if you will, as they say. Thanks for listening. We'll see you guys next week.